Before we get into today's video, we have got a sponsor today. This video is sponsored by Cuppa Confidence. Cuppa Confidence is a group and a safe space where you are to share ideas if you are a small business or an established business. This is a friendly environment where you can be involved and also, again, like I'm saying, a lot, share ideas. But Cuppa Confidence are having a meetup on Wednesday the 5th of October at 6:30 PM at the Caddy Old Library. It'll be a great place to meet in person, share ideas, and also they will have a guest speaker and stalls where you can purchase certain things from. So tickets will cost £10 and you can purchase them on eventbrite.co.uk. It's a great place where you can meet like-minded people and have fun. So if you want to join the Facebook group, Cuppa Confidence link is down below in the description, and also the Eventbrite link is down below. I hope to see you there, guys, because I will be there and I will be really interested to see all these other businesses and like-minded people have ideas floating about, and just learn a couple of new things from me there. So I'm hoping to see you there. Again, if you want to join Cuppa Confidence, that Facebook group is down below, and if you want to purchase tickets to the networking event, that is also down below on eventbrite.co.uk. So let's get into the video. Right, before we start the video, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a content warning, because this video is going to have some brutal violence in it, hence descriptions of murders I will be talking about. As you can tell from the title, it's going to be a rough one. And also, if you see me looking down, because this is a very, very long video, I will be reading from a script. So without further ado, let's get into it. Imagine what the streets of Whitechapel in the East End of London looked like in the 1880s. It would have been overcrowded, with multiple families living under one roof. There would be back-to-back houses with a street stank of human and animal waste. It was a place where you can indulge into your vices. You could find a pub on every street and a brothel next door to it. Also, this is a place where violent crimes take place, such as pickpocketing, muggings, beatings, and of course the worst of them all, murder. In this sort of environment, where one of the world's most infamous serial killers marked his trade. His name is Jack the Ripper. The 31st of August 1888, the first Ripper victim was discovered. At 3:40 AM, Carman Charles Allen Cross was walking down Bucks Road to get to his workplace. He saw what he believed to be tarpaulin, but when he edged closer, he discovered that it was, in fact, a body of a woman. Cross discovered the body of Mary Ann Nichols. She also goes by the nickname Polly, which is I don't know why. It must be something to do with the prostitution. Before I carry on, which is just reveal what she was. She was laid on her back with her eyes open, her legs straight, her skirt raised above her knees, and her left hand was touching the gate of the entrance to the stables. Not long after the discovery, another man on his way to work named Robert Paul joined Charles Cross at the scene. Paul noticed that Nichols was dead and her body was still warm. So both men lowered her dress and went to search for a patrolling police officer. They came across PC Jonas Minzer, who was the first officer at the scene. After inspecting the body and the area, he called Dr. Llewellyn to examine the body, and he discovered the deep cuts all over Nichols' body, including 2 lacerations to her throat, which we will discover as this script will go on. That's another thing that Jack the Ripper would normally do first to his victims. It was quickly determined by the doctors that she was murdered. The murders were very common in Victorian Whitechapel. At first it was linked to a street gang violence, which was common especially towards prostitutes. Many brushed this murder off, but in a week, there was another murder, which we'll get into very shortly. The Ripper would strike again more than a week later, shortly before 5 a.m. on the morning of the 8th of September, on 29 Hanbury Street. The body of 47-year-old artificial flower seller and prostitute Annie Chapman was found in the back garden of her house. The son of the owner of the property was checking if the padlocks at the back gate was locked. To his horror, he discovered the mutilated body of Chapman. She had 2 slashes to the throat. The Ripper mutilated her intestines with places on the shoulder, and her womb was removed, and her abdominal was mutilated. Unlike Mary Ann Nichols, the Ripper showed he had anatomical knowledge. Many of the residents of Hanbury Street heard a woman cry, "No, no, no," but did nothing to stop the Ripper. Many of the police on the scene were horrified by the brutality of the killings, and with the brutality of the killings, it does get worse as we go along. That's why I made sure the warning was at the start before we carry this on, because yeah, especially when you get to the last murder, you do realise how sadistic this man or woman was. So yeah, let's just carry on with it. Many people in the press started to claim that the murderer wore a leather apron and was a Jewish man. Whitechapel had an anti-Semitism issue due to high Polish and Tsarist Russian Jewish immigrants coming towards London. Pressure was placed on the police, and following the 2 murders, local businessmen and merchants set up a group known as the Whitechapel Vigilance Group, and George Lust was nominated as the leader. The Whitechapel Vigilance Group members patrolled the streets. They were supplied with batons to fight the killer itself. These men were paid a small wage, but he would strike again eventually, as we know. But first, let's go on to the letter that Jack the Ripper sent, which I think is one of the most famous letters we know. On September the 25th, the Central News Agency received a letter. This would be the Dear Boss letter, and the first of many letters. The letter did feature many spelling and punctuation errors. In this letter, we first see the killer use the moniker Jack the Ripper as a sign-off. Dear Boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever, talk about being on the right track. That joke about the leather apron gave me real fits. I'm down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and I want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope, ha ha ha. The next job I will do, I shall clip off the lady's ears and send them to the police officers. Just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work. Then give it straight out. My knife is so nice and sharp. I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't enough to post this letter before I got all the red ink off my hands. Course, no luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha ha. The Central News Agency didn't forward the letter to Scotland Yard until the 29th of September, with many in Scotland Yard believing it was a hoax. This news quickly, really quickly, dismissed when a double event occurred. And this one is a big thing, because the Dear Boss letter, which I think is the most viable Jack the Ripper letter. I will get into what Scotland Yard think and all the other detectives at the time. The 30th of September was the day the Ripper hit twice. His first victim was Elizabeth Stride. Her body was discovered in Dutfield's yard on Berners Street around 1 a.m. The killer seemed to be disturbed, as he didn't manage to do his trademark mutilation. The body was discovered by Louise Dimschutz when he was returning 2 horses and a cart back to the yard. She had a single stab wound on her neck. Many thought someone leaving the nearby working men's club disturbed the Ripper. The Ripper wasn't done there yet though. About 45 minutes later, the body of another woman was discovered in Mitre Square in the City of London district. Catherine Eddowes was discovered by a beat officer, P.C. Edward Watkins. Again, you will see Jack the Ripper's trademark mutilation. Deep throat cuts, pulled up skirts, facial disfigurements. It was a brutal crime scene, which would be too shocking for even a Saw film. While the police is investigating the crime scene at approximately 2:55, a blood-stained fragment of Edward's apron was discovered at the bottom of a common stairway at a tenement in Golston Street, Whitechapel. It was discovered by P.C. Alfred Long. This is the first and only real solid evidence left by the killer. The apron was covered in blood, fecal matters and semen, but another thing was discovered. There was a chalk graffiti which read, "The Jews are men that will not be blamed for nothing." P.C. Long had his fellow officers clean the graffiti off the wall. As we know, Whitechapel didn't want more hate crimes to happen towards the Jews. The police suffered more heavy criticism from the press and the public. More days go by and no progress is made. More outrage, and even the New York Times in America took a dig at Scotland Yard, because by now this would become a massive global case. They basically described Scotland Yard as the most stupidest police force in the world, which is a little bit unfair because the Ripper did trace his tracks very well. More pressure was placed on the police when another letter was sent to the Central News Agency. The Saucy Jack letter was received the following day after the double event. The letter was postmarked and received for October the 1st. And talk about postal service at its finest there. The police inspector and the head of investigations, Frederick Aberline, took this letter very seriously, but believed that it was a hoax since all the details in the letter were made public knowledge. So what was said in the Saucy Jack letter? "I was not called in, dear old boss. When I gave you the tip, you'll hear about Saucy Jack's work tomorrow. Double event. This time, number 1 squealed a bit. Couldn't finish straight away. Had not time to get ears off for the police. Thanks for keeping the last letter back till I got to work again. Jack the Ripper." This wasn't the other letter sent out. There was one of the most famous letters, is the From Hell letter, which was sent to Mr. George Lusk of the Whitechapel Vigilance Group. The letter contained a piece of human kidney which was believed to be Catherine Eddowes. So let's get into the letter. From Hell. "Mr. Lusk, sir, I send you half a kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for toes a piece. I fried and ate it. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you only wait a while longer. Signed, Catherine when you can. Mr. Lusk." Like, if you're wondering why I struggle to read that, the spelling, which you saw on screen then, is absolutely dreadful in that. And the handwriting on the actual letter is even worse. I'll just explain it now. After Mr. Lusk passed this letter on to Scotland Yard, all three were analysed next to each other. Many similarities were found between the Dear Boss and Sausage Jack letters, like the handwriting, etc., etc. But the From Hell letter was a hoax. It was figured out to be a hoax because it was actually posted by a medical student. So it would be a good laugh just to freak Mr. Lusk out. Hoaxes and false claims were very common even in 1888. So there were some mad lads out there. Just before I continue with this next victim, this is where the details are at its goriest, and if you do want to skip, I will put like a time code in the comments if you want to skip this, because this is where it's probably at its most violent the Ripper was. More than a month passed and the Ripper didn't kill again, but that would change on the 9th of November 1888. The body of Jack the Ripper's youngest victim was discovered. Mary Jane Caddy was a 25-year-old when her body was discovered by an ex-soldier named Thomas Bowyer, who came to collect her overdue rent in her flat at 13 Miller's Court. Her corpse was mutilated. Bowyer alerted the police, and Inspector Aberline was the first to the scene. Her body was severely mutilated and was shocking and a horrific sight. Her abdomen and thigh were removed. Both of her breasts were cut off, arms mutilated by several jagged wounds, and the face was hacked beyond recognition. The tissues of her neck was severed around and down to the bone. Her vesica was found in various parts of the vis. Her uterus and kidneys, with one breast under her head, the other breast was right down by her right foot, her liver between her feet and intestines on the right side, and the spleen by the left side of her body. That's before I continue, like, that's just so, I'm just going to say, I didn't want to spend it, that's just so fucked up how you can think that's like, that's what went through your head and that's what you're going to do. But yeah, that's Jack the Ripper. Where am I? That's just some of the details released about Mary Kelly's murder. This would be the Ripper's final act. Mary Kelly would be the final murder. The Ripper had all the time and space in the world to commit this unhuman killing. But yeah, that's it. The rest of it were in the streets. Like, he was doing it in the streets. He broke in or was invited in. Maybe he went into Kelly's house as a client. But similar a little bit to Annie Chapman was in her back garden. So, and also he needed to sign off or something. I knew she was like disfigured that much and dismantled and like mutilated, but I left a lot out of here because it went a bit too sore, it went a bit gory, so let's just carry on. Many believe this wasn't the Ripper, but over time many of the murders were linked and many things were found that all 5 victims have in common. So let's get into the canonical 5. The canonical 5 Ripper victims are Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes and Mary Jane Kelly. All 5 were prostitutes working exclusively in the East End of London. 2 of the victims, Annie Chapman and Mary Ann Kelly, both frequented the 10 Bells pub in Spitalfield. I've been there. It's the smallest pub I think I've ever went into, the 10 Bells. The bar's in the middle and it's just seating around it, and this is like a box room. It's probably slightly bigger than this room. The toilets are downstairs and the cellar is upstairs. So yeah, that is a nice pub. I do recommend you go there. Other than the canonical 5 victims, many believe that Jack the Ripper was the one who killed Emma Elizabeth Smith, Martha Tabram, Annie Millwood, Annie Farmer, and Frances Cole. These other murders still haven't been confirmed to be Ripper victims, and to be honest, I can't really see them being confirmed as Ripper victims. But now, yeah, let's just go on. That's all of it now. That's the story of Jack the Ripper. That is basically the generally agreed upon story of Jack the Ripper, because sadly, the full picture of Jack the Ripper, most of it did get destroyed during the German bombings in World War II, the Blitz, when London's East End was hit by the Luftwaffe. So a lot of the files were destroyed when police stations were hit by the Germans. So, without further ado, I think now we should just look at some of the suspects. I'm going to look at 5 notable suspects and 1 really, really ridiculous, insane, like, conspiracy theory one, because I think that deserves notoriety just because how crazy it is. So, let's do the the suspects one. So suspect number 1 is Francis Tumblet. He was an Irish-born American quack doctor who made a small fortune on selling Indian herbs. Yep, one of those guys. Tumblet was known for being a misogynist. Yep, I think I said alright. And had hatred for prostitutes. Again, an absolutely great guy. Although spending most of his life in New York City, he spent the most of 1888 in England and mainly in London. He was arrested before the murder of Mary Jane Kelly, though, for homosexual acts, which then was an illegal thing to do in Victorian England. Past was the worst, in the words of Simon Whistler. The past was the worst. He was investigated for the killings, which forced him to flee London for the United States via France. New York police reports that Scotland Yard tried to extradite him, but it were not confirmed by the British press or the London police. And the New York City police said there's no proof of his complicity in the Whitechapel murders, and the crime for which he is under bond in London is not extraditable. So the case against him was dropped. Suspect number 2. George Chapman. George Chapman was born in Congress, Poland, but would emigrate to Whitechapel in 1887. His birth name was Serwin Kolowski. Chapman was convicted of murder after killing 3 of his wives via poisoning. He was a favourite suspect of Frederick Aberline, but could not be proven. Chapman's murders did not match the Ripper's modus operandus, which eliminated him as a suspect. He was executed for his crimes by hanging in 1903. Suspect number 3, Montague Druitt. He was an English barrister from Dorset, England. Druitt was made a suspect by Assistant Chief Constable Sir Melville McNaughton after suspiciously committing suicide nearly 2 months following the murder of Mary Jane Kelly. Montague Druitt was found floating in the River Thames, which, if you've seen the series Whitechapel, that's the way the killer committed suicide at the end. Spoiler alert. Where am I? But on the day of the first murders, he was in Dorset playing cricket. Inspector Aberline appeared to dismiss Druitt as a serious suspect on the basis that the only evidence against him was a coincidental timing of his suicide shortly after the last canonical murder. This is the weakest one, I think, is Montague Druitt. As in Tumblet, Chapman, and the next one, and possibly the one after that, do have legs. I think Druitt is possibly the weakest suspect. Right, he was playing cricket in Dorset. There's going to be records of that. Suspect number 4, Aaron Kosminski. Aaron Kosminski was a Polish Jew. And for me, he is like my favourite. He is my number one suspect. He's the one I think is the Ripper out of all these. He was admitted to Coney Hatch Lunatic Asylum in 1891 after he lost his mind. He lived and worked in Whitechapel, and at the time of the murders, his movements also matched the killer's. One thing that does let down the case against Aaron Kosminski is a 2014 DNA test against the only piece of evidence, which was Catherine Eddowes' apron. They tested the semen sample, but experts, including the professor Sir Alec Jeffreys, the inventor of genetic fingerprinting, dismissed the claims as unreliable. So that is Aaron Kosminski in a nutshell, and I'll explain why more a bit later on, why I still think is him. Suspect number 5, Mon Walter Sickert. A famous painter became a suspect in 2002 thanks to Patricia Cornwell's book, A Portrait of a Killer. She stated that he was obsessed with the Ripper, which is true. It is. I'll put him on the screen now why he's obsessed. Is this the Ripper? It's true. Going so far to say he stayed in the same room with the rumoured Ripper himself. As a lodger, depicted many similar scenes to his murders in his paintings. Some of his paintings were based with Jack the Ripper, and one did depict the facial wounds of Catherine Eddowes. But DNA ruled out Sickert as the killer due to lack of evidence. Again, I just think he's a post-impressionist painter, and I think when something became so widespread in the news, I think Walter Sickert just took inspiration from it. Artists, the morbid as hell. And finally, suspect number 6, the most ridiculous one of them all, Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence and Avondale. The royal conspiracy is one of the most wild and left-field suspects. Prince Albert Victor was believed to have had a baby with one of the prostitutes, with the other 4 women knew who the father was, and he contracted syphilis from one of these women, which driven him mad. Another theory is that the Queen Victoria and Prime Minister Lord Salisbury plotted to kill the 5 women due to the birth of the baby was a prostitute. I just can't with this one. I just find this is up there with some of the most ridiculous conspiracy theories in the world. So this conspiracy theory is normally closed down like many other wild theories. So I'm not even gonna finish that sentence, because why would you consider that? So I personally think Jack the Ripper is Aaron Kosminski, just because, like I said, he did go a bit insane. Reasons unknown, but another thing I did discover, Kosminski did frequent some of these prostitutes, which could have angered him if one of them ripped him off, or they made comments about him. But he did have hatred for women as well, Kosminski. He did work as a barber and a hairdresser, so some of the prostitutes could have been his clients while he was a hairdresser. So he was very handy with a blade. The anatomical knowledge, we could rule that out if it's Aaron Kosminski, but the fact that Kosminski went insane, he was very frequenting around the areas, his movements matched the Ripper more than George Chapman, who was a poisoner rather than a slasher, a mutilator, other than Francis Tumblet, who was a quack doctor, which his crimes seem to be more homosexual acts, which the past is the worst. But yeah, I generally think it's Aaron Kosminski. He's the one I think has more legs than anyone out of all the Ripper suspects. So there's a lot more. There's about 40 odd Ripper suspects, so I'm just going to cover 6 of the most notable ones. So that's it for the first episode of True Crime Cases. That was the case of Jack the Ripper. If you did enjoy the video and want to see more, I'm going to try and bring them out twice a month, just because I got stuff to do in between. So if you do want to see more, or you're interested in stuff like urban exploring, hiking, documentaries, give give the channel a subscribe because more will be coming soon, especially the other stuff. But if you did like the video, just give it a thumbs up. The next case is going to be about Purple Aki, the man who squeezes muscles. Yep, that is a criminal case, by the way. That's not a joke. That is an actual criminal case. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. And yeah, I'll see you next time, guys.